What makes a company digital? I think that that's a question that comes up quite a bit in the work that I do with various companies. And it's actually not an easy question. So the first question that one often asks me is, if we use digital technologies like emails or websites or social media or chatbots or whatever, does that make us a digital company? And the answer obviously is that that's not what makes you a digital company. So what I believe is that digital companies have 8 characteristics that I will briefly summarize as part of this video. So the first primary distinction between traditional companies and digital companies is that digital companies employ data-driven decision making. In many traditional companies, the decisions are made based on experience by the most senior people in the organization that are the highest up in the Christmas tree, to be very honest. When in data-driven and digital companies, decision making is much more driven by data. We look for the data that allows us to make insightful and qualified decisions that actually are grounded and founded in reality rather than in the perhaps correct but also likely incorrect experiences and beliefs of senior leaders. The second aspect is that digital companies tend to focus on relentless experimentation, whether it's A/B testing, where some companies run thousands of A/B experiments in parallel, or quasi-experiments or crossover experiments or other ways of experimentation. Digital companies constantly try things out in order to collect data and to learn about what is actually the right situation. What does reality look like? Can we quantify and capture as data what reality actually looks like? So relentless experimentation is an important part. When certain data that we need for decision making is not available, we actually focus on experimentation as a means to generate or to collect the data that is necessary. The third aspect is fast feedback loops. In digital companies, companies look to minimize the time between making decisions and collecting feedback in response to those decisions. And in traditional companies, these delays can sometimes be measured in years. In digital companies, they're really looking for ways in order to get feedback on the quality of a decision within hours, days, or weeks in order to figure out if the decision was the right way, was the right thing or not. And that brings us to the fourth aspect, which is where digital companies push decision making down in the organization to the lowest possible place. Typically to the team that has the data, has access to the data and understands the problem domain well enough in order to make decisions. And this is a big thing, because what this means is that you are actually entrusting sometimes even frontline people to take material decisions that have a material impact on the company, or potentially a material impact on the company. But they are the ones that are closest to the problem domain. They're the ones that have access to the data and know how to interpret the data, and are by definition the people that are best suited to actually make the decision. The fifth element is that digital companies focus on strategic data collection rather than waiting until they need to make a decision and then go and look into how can I collect the data. Digital companies tend to be very good in predicting what are likely strategic data items that I would like to have available for decision making in the future, and already now start to collect that data based on the best possible predictions that one can have in order to make sure it is available at a later point in time. And that brings me to the next point, the sixth point, which is that this data is then not spread out through the organization and kept by different teams and has different semantics. Now all that data ends up in a unified warehouse where all data shares a common semantics and data scheme, so that I can actually compare different data types or different data sets that are collected by different teams, because I know that the semantics that these teams have are actually the same. The seventh aspect is pervasive automation. In traditional companies, the fact that humans have to do repeatable tasks is very often a very accepted part of life. It's perfectly acceptable that certain people have to do things every day or every week or every sprint or whatever, and this is manual tasks. In digital companies, it is all about pervasive automation. Everything that even smells like repetitive is automated, and people are looking for ways to automate it and basically get people out of the loop. The final aspect is that even though traditional companies and digital companies may have job titles that sound the same, things like data scientist or principal data engineer, etc., the roles of those people and the job descriptions of those people tend to be quite different. And the interesting thing is that the factors that I have been discussing are not so much hard factors, but they're much more concerned with the soft aspects of the organization, the culture, the norms, the values and beliefs and the ways of working, etc. And the interesting thing is that it is those things, the soft factors, that are actually driving and creating the hard factors, the very easily observable things, where people talk about the software and the data and the AI solutions, etc. But it is actually the underlying culture in a digital company that brings those things forth rather than the other way around. So if you want to become a digital company, these are the 8 factors for you to think about and realize in your organization.